Good morning. We start with the Fox News alert. A somber ceremony in South Korea for the repatriation of 55 American service members killed during the Korean War.
Those remains right there, handed over to the United States by North Korea. They are now on American planes. They're about to head from South Korea to Hawaii for forensic testing before finally going home to their families.
Yeah. So here's what we know. Later on, Vice President Mike Pence, the son of a Korean War combat veteran, will be there at Hickam Air Force Base out in Hawaii for the honorable carry ceremony in Hawaii. Now, we're saying that there are 55 sets of remains. We're not exactly sure if that is a correct number because in the past, when they've gone through the remains, they have found things that were not necessarily human bones and whatnot. Nonetheless, it will take a very, very long time. It could take years using DNA to try to figure out who is in those boxes.
And what they got to do is ask the families of those who know that they have relatives who are missing to provide DNA to help track this down using modern day forensics. But the thing is, the North Koreans have said in the past to other administrations, they got 200 sets of remains. Now, that's a small portion of the roughly 7,700 U.S. Service members missing in action during this brutal Korean War from 1950 to 1953. And you wonder, in the 55, there's only one set of dog tags, and some have speculated, there are so many different countries that fought in this war. Some thinks this could be the French. The Australians had a major presence. You don't know unless they allow us to go where we know some of these military sites were and some of these battles took place. You don't know what they gave us.
Several thoughts came to mind when I was watching the ceremony. It happened our time, 4 a.m. And I thought, how wonderful that the South Koreans are celebrating our veterans, our heroes, or at least honoring them. And here we are 70 years later, and our forensic teams are able to try to piece this back together and figure out who these remains belong to.
Surely. This has been a process over decades. In the 1990s, North Korea returned 208 caskets, much like you're seeing right there. Of the 208, however, they contained more than 208 individuals. Ultimately, after all sorts of kinds of testing, they were able to identify 181 American soldiers. Then between 1996 and 2005, North Korea returned 229 caskets. Of those, it took a very long time, but of the 229, 153 were identified. But the technology has changed. It's all about trying to figure out who in the United States is still alive, and if they can get a DNA sample to try to track whose bones those are.
Well, so remember, this was a generation just after World War II. We thought we were in a set of peacetime. We were going to have a string of that. Then all of a sudden, North invades the South. We have some troops over in Japan. We quickly scramble, but we're in a peacetime war effort. Then we have to bulk up and try to save the peninsula. The world responded, and then in come the Chinese. They have their prisoner camps where Americans were held. They lost, estimated, over 400,000 people in this war. The Russians, the Soviets had a presence. They had 72,000 helping, but not officially in the war. So this was truly the first battle of the Cold War.
This was something that was extremely important to the president. Pete Hegseth is actually traveling with the vice president to Hawaii. We're going to go to him live, and he'll have reports also tomorrow morning because it is very important, obviously, to cover this. But the vice president's going to meet these remains in Hawaii, and then our president was down in Florida because another big issue is making sure Republicans go out and vote during the midterm elections. And he was there to stump for several of the Republicans that are running for the governor's race or for congressional positions down in the state of Florida. He was at the fairgrounds in Tampa. If you missed the rally, here's a little bit of it from last night.
U.S. economy grew at 4.1% last quarter. We're in the longest positive job growth streak in history. Democrats want to raise your taxes. They want to destroy your jobs. Democrats want open borders, which equals massive crime. We want maximum border security and respect for our heroes, ICE, Border Patrol, and law enforcement. And we're going to have tremendous border security that will include the wall. Look at Judge Kavanaugh. So far, the Democrats haven't given us any votes, and that's because they will do anything they can to not help the Trump agenda. Under previous administrations, we never won. We got used to never winning. The economy is too good. The jobs are too strong. We're doing too well. I will leave now because I am boring you to death. Thank you.
Two of the people,
presidential.
Two of the people he wanted to bolster, Rick DeSantis as well as Governor Scott. Now, Governor Scott wants to be the next senator. He's going to give a legitimate run at Senator Nelson, who seems to be just a permanent plant there. And then you have Ron DeSantis, rather. When he decides to run, he was trailing by 22 points, and all of a sudden the president gets behind him, and now he's up by double figures.
Right.
Just for the primary.
Usually, a party leader doesn't get involved in a primary, but the president has aligned himself with Ron DeSantis versus Adam Putnam, who was a very popular agriculture commissioner down in the great state of Florida. By the way, yesterday was Mr. Putnam's birthday, and it wasn't very good because he knew that while he was campaigning there at the Villages, the President of the United States flew in on Air Force One to campaign for his opponent. The reason the president showed up in Tampa yesterday was because mail ballots have started arriving at tens of thousands of homes all across Florida. They have a very active early voting program, and the president wanted to make sure every Republican knew that he is aligned with Mr. DeSantis.
He's helped so many candidates, some in Georgia. We saw what happened in South Carolina, in Alabama. He said yesterday, we need to elect more Republicans to restore American strength and to keep up the momentum. He also said when people come into the Oval Office, even if they didn't vote for him or they don't like him, he said, I hear the same thing over and over and over, and it is thank you, Mr. President, for what you've done for this economy.
Right. And a couple of things. Everyone keeps reporting that General Kelly is out, that he used to have such control over the White House. He doesn't have any control. He's so unhappy. When we have reached out in the past, he says it is just not true. I'm not unhappy. Things are going great. And then you hear that on July 31st, it's going to be 1 year since he took the job. And then after July 31st, not only is he going to keep the job, but he's been offered the state of 2020, and he accepted yesterday. All those rumors, not true.
Hashtag fake news?
Not true news. I know that.
All right. Meanwhile, this was true. Yesterday, the Judiciary Subcommittee on Border Security and Immigration had a hearing, and it was all about, Democrats had called it because they wanted to know more about the family separation. Well, for instance, John Cornyn, senator from the great state of Texas, he was asked one of the experts, who will suffer most if Democrats abolish ICE? Because there have been a number of Democrats who have called for just that. And surprisingly, the authority from ICE said minority communities will be victimized the most because the people who are not removed are involved in gang activity and criminal activity and generally commit crimes against people in the communities where they live.
Well, there was one senator, Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono. She was confused about the immigration laws, and she started asking this ICE official, Mr. Matthew Albence. She appeared to be losing her patience. Then he lost his patience because she didn't understand the law, and she was... Just watch this.
Would you send your child to FRCs?
Again, I think we're missing the point. These individuals are there because they have broken a law. There has to be a process.
They have broken a law only as deemed so by the president with his...
No, ma'am. They're there for violation of Title 8 of the U.S. and Nationality Act. They are in those FRCs pending the outcome of that civil immigration process. They have broken the law. They were criminal proceedings when the Border Patrol prosecuted them, but at the conclusion of that process, once the individual came into ICE custody, they would go through administrative proceedings.
I'm confused.
Apparently, the senator from Hawaii didn't understand that the parents were separated from the children because the parents had broken the law. it's just a fact. And she thought it was because of the president's zero tolerance policy. In fact, it was a U.S. statute.
Right. And you know that 2/3 came in without parents, and we're worried about the third that was separated, and that's been the focus since.
She said they've broken the law based on what the president has said, deemed by the president. And he said, no, it's actually not zero tolerance. It's not the president that made these laws. They are violating Title VIII of the U.S. Nationality Act.
And Ainsley, I just want to tell you that while you were talking, Jillian was waving to the fans outside. So I just want, in case you want to hear from somebody
I'm going like this. They're out there right now.
I mean,
They've
I
got
find
their
it very
umbrellas.
distracting.
Does that mean you're not listening to us?
I wasn't. I'm sorry. But look, there are little kids out there with their umbrellas. And
Am I right, Chris? You have to keep her straight. Okay?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, let me do my job now and focus and get you caught up on the news. And you guys can wave to them. I won't be offended. One of the men accused of murdering border agent Brian Terry is back in the United States and will face a judge today. The suspect just extradited to Arizona from Mexico. Back in 2010, he and his crew were trying to rip off drug smugglers near the border when Terry was shot dead. His death exposed Operation Fast and Furious, a failed ATF program that allowed criminals to buy guns in hopes of tracking them into Mexico. 2 of those guns were found at the scene of Terry's murder. Overnight, 2 new wildfires erupting in California. About 60 homes north of San Francisco forced to evacuate. This, as we learn, the car fire was most likely started by a car with mechanical issues. It has claimed the lives of at least 6 people and is now considered the 6th most devastating fire in state history, with more than 1,200 buildings destroyed. Election interference will take center stage on Capitol Hill today. A congressional hearing on foreign actors trying to influence voters on social media comes hours after Facebook suspended 32 fake accounts and pages. The social media giant sounding the alarm, claiming the politically motivated pages paid for about 150 ads worth $11,000 and were followed by nearly 300,000 people. It's unclear who is responsible for those accounts. That's a look at your headlines.
And that's the key. They don't know for sure who's behind it. I heard some Democrats on Capitol Hill yesterday say clearly it was the Russians, but clearly Facebook at this point doesn't.
Right.
That's not.
I had to go reread the story after everybody was reporting it's a Russian. I go, what did I miss about this? They just jump into the conclusions.
All right. Meanwhile, thank you, Jillian. 13 minutes after the top of the hour, new leads. And this is a Fox News alert. New leads in the search for that missing student from Iowa University. We sent former detective Ted Williams there. He joins us live next with what he's found and what he learned about her boyfriend.
Plus, liberals, in many cases, want to bring universal income to America. Canada tried it. Finland tried it. How does it work? The results just in.
This is the part when I say I don't want it. I'm stronger than I've been before.
New leads in the search for Molly Tibbetts, the University of Iowa student who vanished nearly 2 weeks ago after jogging to her boyfriend's house.
Investigators now looking for perhaps a white man in his 20s who tried grabbing another jogger this week.
All right, Fox News contributor, former Detective Ted Williams, has been working the scene in Iowa the best he can. Joins us now with the latest. Ted, the press conference didn't give us much information. What can you tell us?
Well, the press conference did not, but it did give us, guys, a timeline. We know that on July the 18th, Molly, at around 5:30 in the afternoon, was dropped off at her boyfriend's house. From my investigation, I've been able to determine that Molly was supposedly living with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's brother and her boyfriend's brother fiance. So around, they have been investigated, from what I understand, by investigators, and they have a pretty airtight alibi. But around 7:30 that night on July the 18th, Molly goes running. Well, from what we know, this is where it begins to get murky, because we don't know if she ever got back to her home There are relatives that say that they saw her around 10 o'clock that night or heard from her. Her boyfriend, matter of fact, said he heard from her on Snapchat around 10 o'clock that night from a house.
That's right. And Ted, her boyfriend, Dalton, pictured right there, I believe, he was 100 miles away working a construction job in Dubuque. She was back at the house. But the suggestion has been that after the early suggestion was that maybe she got grabbed when she was out on the jog. But now we know that apparently she may have been doing some homework, maybe on the computer after the jog. And that's why it's so unclear what happened.
Well, you know, you just used the right and proper words, unclear. Law enforcement out here have been very, very tight-lipped. They've conducted over 200 interviews. They have certainly talked to the boyfriend as well as his brother and the relatives of Molly. But everybody is still a suspect in this investigation, guys. It's like a needle in the haystack out here. They're trying to find out what happened to Molly.
All right. Well, Dalton Jack is the boyfriend, and his brother is supposed to get married this weekend down in the Dominican Republic, and they were all planning on heading to the wedding. So we hope that she's found. She's definitely in our prayers. Thank you so much, Ted, for following this story.
My pleasure.
All right. Meanwhile, 10 minutes before the bottom of the hour, the remains of 55 fallen U.S. service members back in the Korean War headed back to the United States. It was a powerful, moving ceremony in South Korea. It happened hours ago. Retired Army Ranger Sean Parnell joins us live on the significance next.
Public. This is the latest attempt in a decades-long push that has resulted in very little progress. Meanwhile, Canada's basic income experiment is getting scrapped. The $110 million pilot program, which provided cash to 4,000 people, is ending under Ontario's new Conservative government. It was meant to determine if giving money to people with lower incomes would impact their lives. Officials say it did not, and it was too expensive. So it's over. Brian?
All right, now to a Fox News alert. It was a somber ceremony hours ago in South Korea for the repatriation of 55 American service members killed in the Korean War 50, 60 years ago. Vice President Mike Pence will mark their historic return to U.S. soil with the ceremony set to take place sometime today in Hawaii. Here to weigh in on the significance of this is Sean Parnell. He's a retired U.S. Army Ranger and the author of the upcoming book Man of War and author of the best-selling book Outlaw Platoon. Sean, what were your reactions to watching that ceremony this morning?
Well, just pride. I think it's a miraculous thing to watch. It's a special thing to behold. Imagine losing a loved one in the Korean War and praying every single day for their safe return, and they never come home. And you have to keep in mind that families of missing in action, the only thing that they get to capture and remember the legacy of the service member that fought in these wars is a folded flag. So to see the remains of these troops finally coming home, it's a special thing to me to watch, but it's also a special thing as a country to behold because, you know, our country is a little bit better now having these soldiers and these troops back on American soil.
I mean, you have basically 200 sets of U.S. war remains. They give us 55 back. That's an initial show of confidence for it. What do you think it's going to take to get the rest? And if they really wanted to show sincerity, wouldn't you agree, Sean, they'd let us walk North Korea because we know where those battles took place. We know where to find our men that fought.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think the president needs to keep doing what he's doing and keeping maximum pressure on North Korea to keep them honest. And ultimately, we need to keep trying to get out there in the field to find these guys, to bring them home. We've been doing it for 60 plus years. Brian, it's a hallmark of the U.S. military to never leave a fallen comrade. It is a central tenet of the warrior ethos. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. And that's what we do. That's what we do in the military. You know, but more than that, it's a sacred pact between this country and those who serve it. We will not leave you behind. And to me, this ceremony, ultimately, it shows these family members who lost loved ones that their sacrifice will not be forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also think it's going to be interesting to see the quest to find out who's there. And now they're calling on family members, survivors, to go to the DNA center to give their DNA, almost like after 9/11 when people were trying to recover the remains of people trapped in those towers and the Pentagon. They're going to do that. So that's how family members can help out now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no doubt about it that there needs to be a full court press in this country, both on the civilian side and on the warrior side. I mean, we have a whole entire command out in Hawaii that's dedicated to the forensic analysis of this DNA that are fighting to bring our servicemen and women home from every war that we've ever fought in. So anything that we can do in this country to bring civilians a little bit closer to the men and women who defend freedom every day is a good thing. And ultimately, any time that we can bring our servicemen and women home off of foreign battlefields back to their final resting place here in the greatest country on earth is a good thing.
And the other thing I like, we're talking about the Korean War for the first time. You know, people think of the Korean War, they think of MASH. That lasted longer than the war by about 3 times. Now people are talking about a war where we lost 33,000. The Chinese lost hundreds of thousands. The North Koreans lost hundreds of thousands. So this whole world was back at war in that peninsula for 7-8 years right after World War II. No one talks about this, but now at least it's in the forefront for a short time. And those Korean War veterans who wonder if they're ever going to get any recognition, maybe have a chance to talk about their war experience, because this was brutal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And to all of those Korean War veterans who are still alive and kicking today, your sacrifice has not been forgotten.
Absolutely. Sean Parnell, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, here we are 30 minutes before the top of the hour, straight ahead. Remember this elected official who sparked national outrage after taking a knee during the Pledge of Allegiance? She's back at it, and the crowd not happy.
I pledge allegiance.
Unbelievable. Tommy Lahren fired up. She's live next. Plus, you know about Washington crossing the Delaware, but have you seen Trump crossing the swamp? Well, look. But first, happy birthday to the lead singer of Def Leppard, Joe Elliott. He's 59 years old today, and somewhere he's wearing a tight outfit.
Today's
We're standing up for America. We're standing up for the heroes who protect America. And yes, we are proudly standing up for our great national anthem.
Sometimes.
That was the president last night down in Tampa, stumping for Ron DeSantis, that is. So he's talking about how we're standing for the national anthem. But it was just a couple of days ago, we brought you the story of a selectman from Haddam, Connecticut, a guy by the name of Larry Maggi. He was shocked that 2 weeks ago at one of their regular meetings, a Democrat by the name of Melissa Schlag took a knee during the Pledge of Allegiance. That was in July 16th. Well, last night they had another meeting. What happened? Let's take you back to Haddam, Connecticut.
They were booing him. They got yelled at.
Did you see the girl in the back? She came around the table to see if her colleague was going to
The cameras everywhere. They also had veterans in the audience just scream at her to stand up, telling their personal stories and how offended they are. It doesn't seem to bother her. She's against the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance in particular.
Well, in particular, she's against Donald Trump. We have some of the reaction from some of the people who were there last night. Let's play some of that.
What are you thinking when you kneel down to the sacred Pledge of Allegiance, that what those people died for gives you the right to do that and disrespect them? I think it was great.
I wholeheartedly respect your right to protest. If that's what you would like to do that on your own time.
Kneel and turn your back on that flag. You turned it on half of this town.
A lot of the folks in Haddam would like to see her resign. She has said she would not.
Yeah, she has no plans to seek a higher office, she says. She has received harassment and threats over her protest and calls for her resignation.
So is this about freedom or is this about disrespect? Tommy Lahren is a contributor, up early for us or out late, we're not sure. Tommy, what's your reaction to the reaction? The reaction I find heartening.
Well, the citizens of that town really said it better than I ever could, and you could see their emotion, you could see their patriotism, which is something that I personally love to see. I think what she's doing is disrespectful. I think also we have to remember that just because she has the right doesn't make her right. And it also doesn't mean that she's going to be shielded from criticism. She's choosing to do this. She's choosing to disrespect the flag. Clearly, veterans in the crowd feel that she's disrespecting them, and she deserves to be called out for it.
It's hard really to watch this, in my personal opinion. We've been watching all of the remains that are in caskets coming home to America. Families have been without their loved ones. They made the ultimate sacrifice. We had a guy on the show the other day who said he didn't see his dad after he was 4 years old because he was missing in action, and dad never came home. Doesn't have answers. So, I mean, when you hear these stories and then you see people kneeling for the flag, knowing what our servicemen and women have done for this country, I mean, to me, it's just so sad.
It's sad and it's really disheartening. I think you hit the nail on the head there, because we have so many Americans that have fought and died for this country. And it just shows that there are some, usually on the Democratic side of the aisle, that their disdain for this president is greater than their love for this country. And I think we need to remember that whatever their issue is with this president, whatever their issue is with this administration or Republicans or Trump supporters, it shouldn't trump, if you will, their love of this country and their respect for those who have fought and died for this country. Why that has become something the Democrats have embraced is beyond me. I don't understand it. Why is patriotism not something that all Americans believe in? You can dislike this president and his administration. You can also use the other 23 hours and 58 minutes in the day to show that disdain for this president and this administration. You don't have to use the anthem. You don't have to use the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, the fellow who was right behind her, who we had on the show about a week ago, Larry Maggi, he said, first of all, that's him right there in the solid green shirt behind with the hand over the heart right there. He said he was so shocked that she had done it, he kind of lost his place in the Pledge of Allegiance. Fast forward, he told us on our air that apparently she's been doing this for a while. And in fact, while this is the first month or so that she's taken a knee, she has removed flags from different events, the American flag and I believe the Connecticut flag as well. Meanwhile, here's her reaction to the folks in the audience calling her out. Listen to this.
It's been worse in this town. This town's fascist and racist.
So the town doesn't like it, but it's fascist and racist, she says.
Well, I think that it's interesting that somebody who's choosing to represent her town and her citizens has such disdain for her town, her citizens, and this country. At the end of the day, if she's removing American flags, if she's kneeling for the Pledge of Allegiance, she has disrespect for the stars and the stripes, why is she choosing to represent her city, her town, her country as an elected official? That's what I don't understand. If she doesn't like it so much, if she has so much disdain for the country in which she lives, why doesn't she just leave like the rest of the anti-Trump crowd that had promised to move? I mean, she's just another one. It's really interesting when you look at this debate and you look at this ongoing protesting. It just goes to show that even the people that claim to hate this country refuse to leave it. So it must be a pretty great one, right?
Right. Or they could do what California's doing and try to secede. That you know about.
For a long time.
Give half the state they're talking about to the in the American Indian nation, and then begin secession noises.
Welcome to California, right?
Those are your people.
That's where she's broadcasting from right now. Tommy Lahren, thank you very much for joining us on this Wednesday.
Thanks, Tommy.
All right.
All right, Jillian has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right, following a number of stories this morning. So let's go ahead and get you caught up on this, something that a lot of people are talking about. Printable 3D gun blueprints set to go online today, put on hold. A judge blocking the release a day after 8 states sued. They wanted to block a June settlement between the company and the State Department that would have made the plans accessible today. The company is vowing to fight.
I believe that I am championing the Second Amendment in the 21st century. I think access to the firearm is a fundamental human dignity. It's a fundamental human right.
Critics are concerned the plans could help put weapons in the hands of criminals. An entire police force resigns on the same day over unsafe working conditions. The 4-person Blandford Police Department in Massachusetts claims cruisers barely run, bulletproof vests are expired and don't fit, and radios don't work. The officers say they had no choice and it's not worth risking their lives for $15 an hour. The state police will respond to emergencies in the small town of about 1,200 people. A sour situation just got a little sweet sweeter. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is helping a boy whose lemonade stand was shut down over a lack of a permit. He's vowing to personally pay for any fees or permits that Brendan Mulvaney needs. The 7-year-old's business was shut down by the health department after vendors at the nearby Saratoga County Fairgrounds complained he was undercutting their business. Brendan was only charging 75 cents. Let's look at your headlines.
And I think they were charging like $5.
I know. We cover these stories all the time. It's insane.
What are they thinking? It never ends well.
What about the good old days when you just had the lemonade stand on the corner?
Don't give a kid a ticket.
Right. I remember the first time I had a lemonade stand. He went down to town. He got a permit process and then filed for a license. That's the way we used to do it.
That's
but I mean, that's the way it should be done.
Ainsley, check him for a fever.
Right. I mean, that's
He's got 101. Yeah, go. Just go.
Just go.
Go to the hospital.
No, Janice Dean wants me to toss to her, right, Janice?
Hi, Brian. Welcome back, my friend.
Good to see you.
It's just not the same without you.
Why are you? Why do you have an umbrella?
Pardon me, because it is raining out here. My friend, get over here. What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Scott, and I'm from Mangum, Louisiana.
And you know what? I was going to tell you that you were here last year, right?
I was in December.
And so it was snowing.
Snowing and cold, yes it was.
And so it's nicer now.
Now it's cool and wet.
Fantastic. Well, get under the umbrella with me.
Oh, that's good.
And let's take a look at the maps. All right, we've got 75 here in New York City, 72 in Buffalo. Up and down the coast, we have the potential for rainfall, a lot of it, unfortunately, from Florida all the way up towards the northeast, and the potential for flooding as well. We have flood watches and warnings from Florida all the way up towards the northeast, and the potential for several inches of rain. Not only that, but we could see also some severe storms later on this afternoon for parts of the northeast. Hey, thanks for coming out. You want to say hi to your wife who's still sleeping?
My wife, Jessica's in the room, my mom and sister back in Mangum, and my church group, Mangum Baptist Church, and
oh my gosh.
back at home.
Well done, my friend. All right, back inside. Brian, Steve Ainsley, the team's all here.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, JD.
Thank you.
That's nice. All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, the Trump administration now warning about the growing cyber security threat from China. So how do we counter their cyber attacks? And how is North Korea involved? We're going to talk about that with an expert next.
Plus, what do the voters think of President Trump's rally last night? Griff Jenkins is having breakfast with friends in Florida. Hey, Griff, I did not know you had friends in Florida.
I have friends in Tampa. I was here in 2016 when the president was here. He was back for the first time as president here at Martha's Family Restaurant. We got Tom, we got Janine, we got the Wizard, we got Diana, and we've got the home of the Hillbilly Skillet. That's coming up next.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Time for some quick headlines. Nissan set to roll out new technology to stop hot car deaths. The rear door alert will honk the horn if the rear door has been opened before a trip and not reopened after. It's available now in the Pathfinder. It will be standard on 3 models next year and all vehicles in 2020. Paying with a Visa? Well, no groceries for you. Kroger is threatening to ban Visa cards from all of its nearly 3,000 stores over swipe fees. And first straws now, maybe ketchup packets. Turns out their days could be numbered. Heinz says it's planning to overhaul its packaging, shifting to a greener alternative. The company says all of its packets will be recyclable by 2025. So there you have it, Steve.
They're going to catch up. All right. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, the Trump administration tackling the threat of foreign hacking head on. So how serious are the cyber attacks and what are we doing to counter them? Today, we focus on China and its cybersecurity threat and how North Korea is also playing a role. It's part of our 3-part series, China, Friend or Foe. Here to talk about it, former State Department Press Officer Morgan Ortagus.
Good morning.
When you look, for months now, it's all been about Russian hacking. But
Right.
you look at China, they're really busy at it, too.
They've been at it, for decades, Steve. And what's really important is not only are they aggressively attacking American government entities, we can go through what we all know publicly, how they've stolen federal employee information from all of our people with security clearance holders. What they're also really aggressively doing now is going after American corporations in Silicon Valley. Valley, stealing our technology there. They're doing it through
They don't want to
traditional
invent
hacking.
stuff. They want to steal our stuff.
Well, and they're also using human spies to do this. And there's a big report in Politico about this where the Chinese human spies will go in, recruit someone at a company, and get that person at the company to hand over company secrets. So they do it via hacking and also via using human spies.
We've got a big screen, Morgan. We're going to show folks some of the big famous hacks that the Chinese have perpetrated. Chamber of Commerce, look at that.
And now the reason why that Chamber of Commerce is so important is because the 3 million members, those are all American businesses.
Across
so
the
again,
board.
they're aggressively attacking American businesses with no response. And I might add, Vice President Pence's speech was so important yesterday because he hit right on this.
And then NASA, they've got a missile program, they've got a rocket program, steal our ideas.
And this one here on the FEC in 2014, the Federal Election Commission, is so important because we hear about Russia. Way back in 2014, the Chinese were in the FEC.
Okay, you look at the post office, they stole the data of 800,000 employees, then the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that's all about science, and the Office of Personnel Management.
And that was the OPM one is really important because that was thousands and thousands of people with top secret security clearances. They stole all of their
22 million personnel files.
Yeah, I was one of them. Thanks.
Really?
Both my husband and I were former government employees. We got the letter.
And a Navy contractor, they stole some data on undersea warfare data as well. Meanwhile, what about North Korea?
Right. So the North Koreans are also incredibly sophisticated in cyber espionage as well. We often talk about North Korean nuclear weapons, ICBMs, which is all very important. But whenever the Sony hack came out, that was the first time that the public
With that funny
learned.
movie.
With the funny movie. It was the first time that the public learned about how sophisticated the North Koreans actually are in cyber attacks. So individual companies in America, you have to have systems, to protect against hacking. But we really need to, what we need to do is the Chinese have not paid a public price for what they've been doing to us for 10 or 20 years as it relates to hacking our government and hacking our businesses. They paid, I'm sure that the U.S. government has done things behind the scenes, but there's been nothing public. And so I thought Vice President Pence's announcement yesterday was so important about taking this stuff on publicly and drawing a line in the sand and saying, you are no longer going to do this.
Well, I tell you what, it is very important, and a lot of people don't think about China. They just think about Russia, but that's a big problem.
The Chinese are more sophisticated, way more.
Morgan, I tell you what, our series continues tomorrow as we examine China's economic threat to the United States and what's going to happen with trade and tariff and all that stuff. We'll see you then.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Meanwhile, what did the voters think of President Trump's rally last night in Tampa? Griff Jenkins is having breakfast with friends in Florida, and we're going to check in with him as he pours some hot coffee down in Florida.
It's deep head bobbing up, down, up, down, up, down. We got what we got, we don't need the rest. Can turn this parking lot into a party.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Time for some quick headlines. Nissan set to roll out new technology to stop hot car deaths. The rear door alert will honk the horn if the rear door has been opened before a trip and not reopened after. It's available now in the Pathfinder. It will be standard on 3 models next year and all vehicles in 2020. Paying with a Visa? Well, no groceries for you. Kroger is threatening to ban Visa cards from all of its nearly 3,000 stores over swipe fees. And first straws now, maybe ketchup packets. Turns out their days could be numbered. Heinz says it's planning to overhaul its packaging, shifting to a greener alternative. The company says all of its packets will be recyclable by 2025. So there you have it, Steve.
They're going to catch up. All right. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, the Trump administration tackling the threat of foreign hacking head on. So how serious are the cyber attacks and what are we doing to counter them? Today, we focus on China and its cybersecurity threat and how North Korea is also playing a role. It's part of our 3-part series, China, Friend or Foe. Here to talk about it, former State Department Press Officer Morgan Ortagus.
Good morning.
To you. When you look, for months now, it's all been about Russian hacking. But you look at China, they're really busy at it, too.
They've been at it, for decades, Steve. And what's really important is not only are they aggressively attacking American government entities, we can go through what we all know publicly, how they've stolen federal employee information from all of our people with security clearance holders. What they're also really aggressively doing now is going after American corporations in Silicon Valley. Valley, stealing our technology there. They're doing it through
They don't want to
traditional
invent
hacking.
stuff. They want to steal our stuff.
Well, and they're also using human spies to do this. So, and there's a big report in Politico about this, where the Chinese human spies will go in, recruit someone at a company, and get that person at the company to hand over company secrets. So they do it via hacking and also via using human spies.
We've got a big screen, Morgan. We're going to show folks some of the big famous hacks that the Chinese have perpetrated. Chamber of Commerce, look at that.
And now the reason why that Chamber of Commerce is so important is because the 3 million members, those are all American businesses.
Across
so
the
again,
board.
they're aggressively attacking American businesses with no response. And I might add, Vice President Pence's speech was so important yesterday because he hit right on this.
And then NASA, they've got a missile program, they've got a rocket program, steal our ideas.
And this one here on the FEC in 2014.